Hello everyone. Welcome to the Non-Sleep Rules series. Today's episode is titled, My Dog Started Walking on Two Legs. Then I found a note that said, Don't look at it. Wishing you an enjoyable listening experience. Let's begin. Everything began around 6 o'clock on Christmas Eve, or at least that's what the old pendulum clock hanging on the living room wall was trying to tell me. Outside, the worst blizzard in a decade roared, transforming the world beyond the windows into a chaotic white void of death. The wind shrieked through the window cracks like fingernails scraping against a chalkboard, a sharp, cold sound that penetrated straight to the bone. I stood in the kitchen, fingers wrapped around a glass of red wine, desperately seeking warmth. The smell of roasting turkey, cinnamon, and pine burning in the fireplace should have brought me peace, but instead, the air in this isolated wooden cabin felt strangely oppressive. My head pounded like a hammer against an anvil. Every time I tried to remember how I'd driven here or how we'd prepared for this vacation, the memories blurred and scrambled like a corrupted old tape. Only fragments remained, blinding headlights, the grating screech of metal on metal, and the overwhelmingly nauseating smell of disinfectant. Must be the altitude and low pressure, I told myself, taking a sip of wine to chase away the shiver running down my spine. Buster, our 5-year-old golden retriever, sensed something was wrong too. Instead of lounging by the fireplace as usual, he huddled in a dark corner of the room, his hackles raised. He stared fixedly at the empty space beside the Christmas tree, eyes wide with fear, emitting weak whimpers, tail tucked tightly between his hind legs. "Buster, come on, boy," I called to him, my voice echoing hollowly in the large room. "There's nothing there." He didn't turn around, still staring at that invisible point, as if waiting for something to materialize from the darkness. Suddenly, the landline phone rang out, tearing through the silence. The shrill ringing came in rapid bursts, making me jump and nearly drop my wine glass. I quickly wiped my hands on my apron and picked up the receiver. "Hello?" The other end held only heavy static interference, crackling like a radio losing signal. Then Mark's voice came through, broken and mixed with the howling wind. "Sarah, can you hear me? Sarah!" My heart clenched. "Mark, where are you? I thought you were just getting more firewood from the shed out back." "Listen, the car broke down." His voice rushed out, full of panic. "The storm, much worse than predicted. Highways blocked, snow's buried my car. I'm waiting for rescue, but they say it'll be at least 3 more hours before they can reach me." I stood stunned, checking the clock. The temperature outside was -20 degrees. "Oh God, Mark, are you okay? Is there any way I can come get you?" "No, don't go outside," Mark shouted through the phone. "Stay inside, lock the doors. I'll try to stay warm. Sarah, my phone's dying. I love you. Don't wait." The signal cut off abruptly. Only the cold, hopeless beep, beep, beep remained, ringing steadily. I let my hand holding the phone drop limply, a cold sensation engulfing my entire body. Mark was trapped in the blizzard, dozens of miles away, possibly freezing to death. Unconsciously, I looked up toward the kitchen window. Outside was only pitch-black night and snowflakes battering the glass like furious fistfuls of white sand. But then, a flash of lightning from the storm lit up, illuminating the front yard for an instant. The blood in my veins seemed to freeze. I saw a figure. It stood motionless in the yard, wearing a red parka identical to Mark's. It made no effort to shield itself from the storm, head tilted back toward the sky, catching the cold snow, arms hanging lifelessly at its sides. My heart raced erratically. Had he made it back? Did he walk home? But how? I blinked. A distant rumble of thunder echoed. When I opened my eyes, the figure had vanished. The yard stood empty, only snow and more snow. I'm hallucinating, I muttered, rubbing my throbbing temples. Mark is on the highway. You need to calm down, Sarah. You need... I turned back to preparing dinner, planning to find a coat and go check outside. That's when my world collapsed. Right at the kitchen counter, where just 10 seconds ago there had been no one, a man stood with his back to me. He wore the ugly green Christmas sweater I'd knitted for Mark last year. Tall build, broad shoulders, messy brown hair. It was Mark. He held a cleaver, chopping with even rhythmic strikes into a raw turkey on the cutting board. Thwack, thwack, thwack. The sound of the knife hitting the wooden board rang out with mechanical regularity. He began humming the tune of Jingle Bells. His voice was deep, warm, 99% identical to my husband's. But that remaining 1%, it was too smooth, too perfect, completely emotionless, like it came from a high-quality speaker rather than a human larynx. My head spun, nausea washing over me. I just spoke to Mark on the phone. He was trapped 20 miles away. I just saw his shadow outside. And now, he was here, right in my kitchen? Mark? My voice came out tiny, throat too dry to form words. The chopping stopped immediately. The kitchen plunged into absolute silence for several seconds. The man didn't turn around. He only tilted his head slightly, his voice ringing out with terrifying cheerfulness. Honey, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. A little blizzard's nothing to me. He continued chopping. Thwack, thwack. I stepped back, hand touching the cold edge of the dining table to maintain balance. This wasn't my husband. 13 years together, I knew Mark was left-handed. The thing standing in the kitchen, it was holding the knife in its right hand. I wanted to scream, wanted to run, but my body betrayed me. It was completely paralyzed. My gaze accidentally fell on the tabletop, right next to my half-finished coffee cup. There was a yellow sticky note attached to the bottom of the cup. I swear it hadn't been there moments ago. With trembling hands, I turned the coffee cup over. The handwriting on the note was scrawled, rushed, filled with fear. It was my handwriting. The note read, "Don't trust your eyes. That's not him. Don't let it know you've seen this." At that moment, my cell phone in my pocket violently vibrated, accompanied by a piercing emergency alert sound. Beep, beep, beep. Both Mark in the kitchen and I flinched. He slowly turned his head. I held my breath. For the first time, I saw his face clearly under the kitchen light. It was Mark's face, but the skin, too perfect, stretched and glossy like a wax figure. Not a single wrinkle, not a single pore. And the eyes, his eyes were wide open, unblinking, pupils dilated to their fullest like a dead fish's eyes, staring directly at me. "Your phone, Sarah," he said, the corners of his mouth stretching into a smile that reached from ear to ear, a smile that never touched his eyes. I pulled out my phone, hand shaken so badly I nearly dropped my wine glass. The screen displayed a message from an unknown number, sender name System Admin. I opened the message, the lines of text appearing like a death sentence. Red code warning. Intrusion protocol activated. Subject, Sarah. Sarah, listen to me. Don't look directly at it. That's a mimic, a copycat. It's trying to download data from your brain to perfect its disguise. You are in extreme danger. To survive tonight, you must follow these rules. It has no memories. It learns through observation. Don't mention anything from the past beyond 1 hour ago. If it asks, say, "I forgot." False perfection. It's obsessed with playing the perfect husband role. Praise it. If you show fear or suspicion, it will consider that a script error and will eliminate you. check Buster. Look at the dog. If it wags its tail, it's the real dog. If it walks on two hind legs, run immediately to the bathroom and lock the door. The storm is part of it. Don't try to open the door and run outside. You'll only end up back in the living room. Space has been warped. I turned off the screen, quickly shoving the phone in my pocket. My heart pounded like it would burst through my rib cage. The fake Mark still watched me, that smile frozen on his lips, rigid as if painted on. "Who texted you?" he asked, tone curious, but eyes scrutinizing down to my very core. I swallowed hard, forcing my facial muscles to relax, molding the fakest smile I could manage. "Oh, just spam. Christmas advertisements." He stared at me for 5 seconds, the longest 5 seconds of my life, as if he was scanning every expression on my face, searching for deception. Then, suddenly, he blinked. The tension vanished. He turned back to the turkey. "Really? Spam is so annoying. Hey, honey, could you grab me a bottle of wine from the cellar? This knife's so dull. I need to sharpen it a bit." The frantic pounding stopped as suddenly as it had begun. Silence crashed over the tiny bathroom, so heavy I could hear my pulse hammering against my temples. "Sarah? Honey?" Mark's voice drifted through the wooden door. It had returned to that familiar, warm, gentle tone, a complete reversal from the threatening growl moments ago. "Are you okay? I'm sorry if I startled you. I was just worried the turkey would get cold." I stood pressed against the sink, both hands gripping the icy porcelain edge to keep my legs from giving out. The backwards writing on the foggy mirror, "Attempt 402, we failed again," was already fading, as if it had never existed. I took a deep breath, trying to piece together the chaos in my mind. The warning message, the dog walking upright, and my husband standing just outside. I checked my phone again. No signal, no internet, just a new notification from system_admin that flashed briefly. Rule number 2, he's obsessed with perfection. Play your part well. I knew I couldn't hide in here forever. If I didn't come out, he'd break down the door, and I didn't want to find out what would happen after that. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face to clear my head. When I looked up, I forced my facial muscles to relax, molding them into what I hoped was a natural-looking smile. I unlocked the door. Mark stood right there in the hallway. He still wore the apron covered in turkey blood, his arms hanging loosely at his sides. When he saw me, he smiled. A smile so perfect it was terrifying. His teeth gleamed white and perfectly even, and his face showed not a single natural crease or movement, as if it were a rubber mask stretched too tight. "There you are," he said without blinking. "Dinner's ready." "I'm sorry," I replied, keeping my voice light. My stomach was a little upset. "The turkey smells so good." The lie seemed to work. His wide, staring eyes narrowed slightly with satisfaction. He reached out to take my hand. His palm was ice cold, smooth, and utterly devoid of living warmth. I shuddered, but didn't dare pull away. He led me toward the dining room. As we passed through the living room, I glanced at the corner where Buster had been standing. He was gone. "Where's Buster?" I asked without thinking, then immediately regretted it, remembering the rule about pets. Mark maintained his smile without turning around. "He got tired and went to sleep. You know how old dogs get when a storm's coming." We entered the dining room. The table had been set with bizarre meticulousness. Candles flickered, the white tablecloth was spotless, and in the center sat a golden brown roasted turkey. But something was off. The smell wasn't savory roasted meat. It was a sharp, acrid odor, like burning plastic or electrical wires, clumsily masked by overpowering artificial fragrance. I sat down, Mark stood at the head of the table and began pouring wine. The color was deep red, thick as arterial blood. "Do you remember our Hawaii trip last year?" Mark suddenly asked, his tone cheerful. "Wasn't that wonderful?" My heart clenched. We'd never been to Hawaii. Last year we were drowning in debt. We couldn't even afford Christmas gifts. He was testing me, checking if my memories aligned with his script. I remembered Rule 1, don't recall the past. If he asks, say you forgot. I took a sip of wine. It tasted sour and spoiled like vinegar, then smiled and answered, "Oh, my mind's been so foggy lately. I can't quite remember. But I'm sure it was lovely, wasn't it? What matters is we're here now, together." The answer seemed to satisfy him. He nodded repeatedly, the motion jerky like a puppet with tangled strings. "Yes, yes, together, forever." Suddenly, I heard a strange sound from under the table, a dry click, click of bone against bone. I pretended to drop my napkin. As I bent down to retrieve it, the sight beneath the table froze my blood. In the dark corner under the table, Buster sat, but not in a dog's posture. He was sitting flat on the floor, hind legs stretched straight out, back against the wall, front paws folded across his chest, exactly like a human. His eyes, the eyes of my once beloved dog, were now clouded over with milky white. He stared directly at me from under the table. Then, slowly, his long snout curled upward into a grotesque smile mimicking Mark's exactly. He raised one paw and placed it against his lips in a shush gesture. I jerked upright, nearly knocking over my chair. "What's wrong?" Mark asked, his knife and fork frozen in midair. "Nothing, nothing," I stammered, my heart pounding like it would burst from my chest. "My leg just fell asleep." Mark stared at me. For a brief moment, his face suddenly blurred. Like watching a low-quality video buffering, the features on his face fractured into tiny squares, pixels, revealing a deep, pitch-black void beneath the artificial skin, then immediately snapped back to normal. He was a glitch. This entire world was a glitch. "Sweetheart," Mark said, his voice dropping to a threatening register, "you don't look very happy. Are you sure you're all right?" He began to stand, gripping the carving knife tightly. At that exact moment, the doorbell rang. Ding! Dong! The cheerful chime shattered the suffocating atmosphere. Both Mark and I turned toward the front door. Who could possibly be here at the middle of a blizzard that could kill anyone in minutes? "Company's here!" Mark exclaimed, his face instantly transforming into exaggerated delight. "Wonderful! The more the merrier." He set down the knife and strode quickly to the door. I stood frozen in place, looking out the living room window. Outside, the blizzard had stopped with eerie abruptly. But the sky, the night sky, held no stars. It was utterly black, an absolute flat blackness, like someone had turned off a television screen. And standing at my door wasn't just one person. Through the porch light, I saw my in-laws and neighbors I'd never even met. They stood motionless in the snow, no one shivering from cold. All wore thin summer clothes, their skin a sickly gray-green, and every single one bore a smile stretched ear to ear, identical to Mark's. They hadn't come to celebrate Christmas. They'd come to play their parts in this insane performance. The door swung open, and the real nightmare was only just beginning. The heavy oak door swung wide open, ushering the storm's biting cold into the warm hallway. But the people standing at my doorstep seemed utterly oblivious to that cold. At the front stood my in-laws, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson. They died in a plane crash 3 years ago. I distinctly remembered sobbing over their sealed coffins. But now, here they were, flesh and blood, or at least appearing to be. The strangest thing wasn't their resurrection, but what they were wearing. In the middle of a -20-degree blizzard, my mother-in-law wore a flimsy summer floral dress and a wide-brimmed beach hat. My father-in-law wore a short-sleeved shirt and khaki shorts, his skin a sickly gray-green and coated with frost. Behind them stood neighbors from houses miles away, faces I'd only glimpsed a few times, now crowded together, all bearing rigid smiles, eyes wide and vacant, staring directly at me. "Merry Christmas, dears!" My mother-in-law's voice rang out. Her tone was bright, echoing unnaturally, with no visible breath condensing in the frigid air. "Merry Christmas!" The crowd behind her chorused in perfect unison, synchronized like a pre-programmed choir. The fake Mark stepped forward, arms spread wide, to welcome them as if this were the most normal thing in the world. "Mom, Dad, everyone's right on time. The turkey just came out of the oven." They flooded into my house, dozens of people crowding into the living room. Yet, strangely, there was no sound of footsteps. They glided across the wooden floor smoothly, producing no noise whatsoever. The scent they carried wasn't of cold snow or perfume, but of acrid ozone, the smell of burnt electrical equipment. We moved into the dining room. The table, which had been set for 4, impossibly stretched to accommodate everyone. I was wedged between the fake Mark and my father-in-law. "Now let's feast," Mark declared cheerfully. He took up the knife and fork, ceremoniously cutting into the plump turkey. The golden brown skin split open, but what flowed out from inside wasn't meat juice or hot fat. It was a viscous, pitch-black substance like motor oil. And when Mark peeled back the meat layer, I nearly vomited on the spot. It wasn't meat at all. Beneath that artificial chicken skin were clusters of tiny red and blue wires, glittering circuit boards, and metal screws in place of bones. "This is exquisite," my father-in-law exclaimed. He reached out, grabbed a piece of meat full of wires and oil, and shoved it straight into his mouth, chewing voraciously. Crunch, crunch, scrape. The sound of metal being ground between his teeth rang out piercingly. Black oil dribbled from the corners of his mouth, dripping onto his white shirt. The other guests began digging in as well. They tore into that mechanical turkey, fighting over cable segments, swallowing electronic chips with apparent relish. I sat frozen, clutching my napkin tightly under the table. Suddenly, all movement stopped. Dozens of pairs of eyes turned toward me in unison. "Sarah, dear daughter-in-law," my mother-in-law spoke, her mouth still smeared with black oil. "Why aren't you eating? Do you disapprove of Mark's cooking?" "That's right," a neighbor chimed in, voice crackling like a broken radio. "Why isn't she eating? Isn't she happy?" The fake Mark turned to me, the oil-stained knife gleaming in his hand. His eyes darkened. "Honey, aren't you hungry?" Rule number 2, play the part of a happy wife. Don't let him suspect anything. I swallowed hard, forcing down the nausea rising in my throat. Trembling, I picked up my fork and speared a small piece of meat, actually a bundle of plastic-coated copper wire. "No, not at all," I smiled, voice shaking. "I'm just so moved. Such a wonderful meal." I brought the wire to my mouth. The smell of burnt plastic assaulted my nose. I bit down lightly, pretending to chew, feeling the cold metallic taste and bitter motor oil spread through my mouth. I quickly used my napkin to cover my mouth, pretending to wipe while spitting the disgusting thing into the cloth, then swallowed hard so they'd think I'd eaten it. "Delicious!" I exclaimed, tears welling up from revulsion. The entire table erupted in cheer. They resumed their feast, the sound of metal crunching filling the air like hail pelting a tin roof. I needed to escape this table immediately. I forgot dessert. I jumped up, trying to seem excited. I made a chocolate Yule log and left it up in the attic to keep cool. Let me go get it. Mark looked at me suspiciously for a second, then nodded. Be quick, honey. Everyone's waiting. I squeezed through the crowd of guests devouring their meal and hurried toward the stairs leading to the attic. The higher I climbed, the thinner and more silent the air became. The noise from the party below seemed blocked by an invisible glass barrier. I pushed open the attic door and stepped into the dusty darkness. The place was eerily quiet, only the faint wind outside. I leaned against the door, gasping, trying to wipe the black oil residue from my lips. I moved closer to the small round window in the attic, intending to look outside to check for any signs of the rescue team or the real Mark. But when I looked through the dusty glass, what I saw wasn't a blizzard, nor was it night. I stepped back, rubbed my eyes, then looked again. Outside the window, the world had disappeared. No yard, no forest, no highway. Instead, there was an endless black wall, and running along it were streams of green code cascading down like rain. 01010, system error, null pointer, 011. Lines of code scrolled down, occasionally jerking and distorting. I saw a bird suspended mid-flight, but it wasn't flapping its wings. It was frozen, and half its body had fractured into pixelated squares, flickering with electronic green light. "What the hell is this?" I whispered, my trembling hand touching the ice-cold glass. This wasn't the real world. This was a computer program, a simulation. Beep! My phone vibrated again, a new message from System Admin. "You've seen it now, haven't you? Do you understand why you can't leave? Sarah, listen to me. This house is a data file. And them, those guests downstairs, they're antivirus cleanup programs. You are the system error they want to delete." Before I could process this, a loud noise erupted from the stairway. Creak! The attic door I'd just closed was slowly opening. Yellow light from below shot upward, stretching a pitch-black shadow across the attic's wooden floor. "Sarah?" The fake Mark's voice rang out, but this time it was no longer warm. It echoed, overlapping as if hundreds of voices were speaking at once. "What are you doing up there? Where's the cake? Why did you look out the window? The rules say you're not supposed to look outside." Footsteps began pounding up the wooden stairs. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy, slow, but steadily advancing toward me. I looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but the attic was bare. Only an old wooden chest in the corner of the room. And on the lid of the chest, someone had placed a bright red first aid kit with a hastily scrawled note in the real Mark's handwriting. "Open it. Your weapon is inside." The footsteps on the wooden stairs grew more frantic, heavy as a sledgehammer pounding the floor. Thud, thud, thud. The entire attic shook with each step. I lunged toward the old wooden chest in the corner, hands trembling as I yanked open the bright red first aid kit. Inside wasn't bandages or antiseptic, just two items lying stark against the red velvet lining. A silver Zippo lighter engraved with "To Mark, 5th anniversary," and a large can of hairspray. My weapon, fire. The real Mark's message echoed in my head. Fire is the only antivirus software. I snatched up both items, my thumb flicking open the Zippo. Click. A small blue flame flared to life, tiny but defiant in the darkness. At that moment, the fake Mark's shadow filled the attic doorway. He no longer stooped to pass through. His head slammed into the wooden frame above, but he didn't flinch. He just kept coming, and his body began to change. Horrifying cracking sounds rang out. His limbs elongated unnaturally, joints twisting backward against nature. The Christmas sweater tore apart, revealing gray skin underneath, smooth as synthetic plastic. My husband's handsome face began to melt, sliding down like hot wax, exposing a deep, pitch-black cavity where his mouth should be, filled with rows of sharp, rotating metal teeth like a grinder. "Delete," he hissed. The voice was no longer Mark's. It was the sound of thousands of interfering radio frequencies mixed together, piercing and mind-splitting. "Data, error, Sarah, must be deleted." Behind him, the guests, my in-laws, the neighbors, were swarming up as well. They crawled across the floor on all fours like giant spiders, heads rotated 180 degrees, eyes glowing blood red like system error lights. "You ruined the party!" my mother-in-law shrieked, her long tongue dripping with motor oil lashing through the air. I backed up, spine hitting the cold wall. No way out. "Come and get it!" I screamed, holding the hairspray forward and positioning the Zippo's flame right at the nozzle. I pressed down hard on the button. Whoosh! A massive stream of fire erupted like dragon's breath, tearing through the attic's darkness. The flames engulfed the fake Mark's deformed body. But he didn't burn like normal flesh. He burned like an old photograph thrown into a furnace. His artificial skin peeled away, curling up, revealing glittering black patches underneath. He didn't scream in pain. Instead, he emitted a piercing electronic shriek. Screech! The sound of a hard drive being destroyed. Electric sparks shot from his body, scorching the wooden floor. The acrid smell of burning plastic and heavy ozone rose up, making me cough violently. "Error! Critical error!" the monsters behind him chorused, voices filled with the mechanical panic of system failure. I didn't stop. I swept the flame toward the guests charging at me. My mother-in-law burst into flames, her body shattering into millions of green pixels, floating in midair before dissolving into nothingness. The fire spread with impossible speed. It caught the curtains, caught the stacks of old books, caught even the air itself. But this fire wasn't destroying matter. It was erasing reality. The attic walls began collapsing, revealing vast black voids covered with frantically running lines of code. The ceiling disappeared. The wooden floor beneath my feet began shaking violently. The fake Mark, now just a smoking black metal skeleton, still tried to lunge toward me with long, spindly, sharp hands. "I love you, Sarah. I must keep you," he stammered, voice distorted, repeating like a scratched record. I looked into the empty eye sockets of the monster that once wore my husband's face, tears streaming down. "You're not my husband. You're just a cage." I hurled the hot hairspray can straight at him and followed with a kick. The canister exploded. Boom! A blinding explosion threw me backward. The attic floor shattered beneath me. The entire house, or rather this entire simulation, collapsed completely. I fell. Weightlessness engulfed me. I closed my eyes, waiting for the painful impact with the ground, waiting for death. But that impact never came. When I opened my eyes,
I found myself standing on a flat, blank surface that was stark white and infinite. No sky, no horizon, just a blinding white expanse stretching forever. The space was absolutely silent. No wind, no sound at all. I stood up, brushing digital ash from my shoulders. The wooden cabin, the blizzard, the monster Mark, all had vanished. I began walking aimlessly, and then I realized I wasn't alone in this place. Scattered across the endless white expanse were motionless forms. I approached the nearest corpse. It was a woman in a red sweater. She lay curled up, positioned as if sleeping. I turned her over. I screamed and jerked backward. That face was my face. It was a copy of me. Her skin was pale and ice cold. Around her neck were purple bruises, as if she'd been strangled. I looked farther out. A few meters away was another corpse, also me, but this version wore a patient's gown, her head shattered as if she'd been through a horrific accident. Further still was a charred black corpse, another frozen solid. Dozens, hundreds of Sarah corpses lay scattered everywhere like a graveyard of discarded drafts. I collapsed to my knees, dry heaving despite my empty stomach. The writing on the mirror flashed through my mind. Attempt 402. We failed again. This wasn't the first time I'd fought. This was the 402th time I'd died. Each corpse here was a time I'd tried to escape and failed. Mark, or whoever controlled this place, had resurrected me, reset me, and thrown me into this loop over and over again. Why? I screamed into the white void. Why won't you let me die? The answer appeared in the form of a heavy metal door, slowly materializing on the white horizon. On the door was a small LED sign, blinking green text. Central Server Room Entrance. I wiped my tears and stood up. I stepped over my own corpses, walking toward the door. Whatever truth lay beyond that door, I would face it. This time, there would be no attempt 403.
I placed my hand on the cold metal door blocking the path between me and the truth. No handle, no lock, but the moment it sensed my presence, the door shuddered and slid open with the dry screech of hydraulic systems long starved of oil. Cold air rushed out from inside, not the biting cold of a blizzard, but the sterile, silent cold of a laboratory. I took a deep breath and stepped through. The scene before me was dizzying, every concept of space and time seeming to collapse. No trace remained of the cozy wooden cabin or snow-white suburbs. This was a vast domed room where walls and ceiling were covered by thousands of black cables tangled like a gigantic spider web. At the room's center stood a column of blue light containing dozens of servers running at full capacity, emitting a deep humming that pressed against my chest. And, sitting there, on a solitary swivel chair before rows of flickering data displays, was a man. He faced away from me, his thin shoulders slumped, radiating exhaustion and loneliness to the very core. The white lab coat he wore had yellowed and wrinkled, as if he'd been sitting there for years without ever leaving. "Mark?" I called softly, my voice echoing in the cold metal space. The man slowly turned his chair around. I stepped back, hand covering my mouth to suppress a sob. It was Mark, but not the handsome, youthful man with the perfect smile I'd just seen at that artificial feast. This man was at least 10 years older. His hair was streaked with gray, his beard unkempt and unshaven, and his eyes, sunken deep, dark-circled, bloodshot from sleeplessness and desperation. "Hello, Sarah." His voice came out hoarse, like gravel scraping together.
Sorry. This time, I thought I'd fix that bug. I stepped closer, looking at the screens before him. Red error messages scrolled across them. Subject, Sarah. Psychological instability, 99% level. Simulation status, collapsed. Where is this? I asked, though deep down a vague dread had already begun taking shape. And those bodies outside, those copies of me, what's happening? Mark sighed, a heavy, painful breath like releasing a lifetime's burden. He raised his hand to touch my face, but his fingers passed through my cheek like moving through mist. His fingers trembled and blurred into hazy pixels. "You're not real, Sarah," he said, tears streaming down his gaunt cheeks. "Or, at least, this body isn't real. This is the Eve server, the project I spent my entire fortune and soul building. I'm dead?" My voice shook, but strangely not from fear, rather from a strange acceptance creeping into my heart, as if I'd known this all along. Mark nodded, closing his eyes in pain. 5 years ago, the car accident on Christmas Eve. You suffered severe traumatic brain injury. The doctor said you were brain dead, but I couldn't accept that. I couldn't let you go. I'm a neural engineer, Sarah. I know how to copy consciousness. I scanned your entire brain before they removed life support and uploaded you here. He pointed at the towering server column in the room's center, the repository of my entire small world. I wanted to create paradise for you, a place where we could live forever without pain, without separation. I created the house, created a copy of myself to stay with you, protect you. What about the monsters? I snapped. Memories of Buster's broken jointed body and the guests eating motor oil flooding back, making me shudder. If you love me, why did you create those disgusting things to hunt me? Why did you turn paradise into hell? Mark laughed bitterly, shaking his head. No, Sarah, I didn't create them. You did. I froze. What? Your subconscious knows the truth, Mark explained, his voice trembling. No matter how perfectly I programmed this world, deep down you still knew you were dead. The mimics, the monsters, the blizzard, they're all defense mechanisms from your brain. They're psychological antibodies. They're trying to destroy this artificial world, trying to kill you so you can be freed, so you can truly die. I looked down at my hands, beginning to fade. So that was it. I wasn't the victim of any monster. I was the victim of this selfish clinging. And the deepest part of me had been screaming for rest for 5 years. The system is collapsing, Mark said, his fingers flying desperately across a virtual keyboard. But don't worry, I can fix it. I'll erase your memory of tonight. We'll start over. Attempt 403 will be different. I'll adjust the parameters. Summer, maybe? Or should we go to Paris? You'd love Paris. Stop it, Mark, I said, my voice strangely calm. Mark's finger froze above the enter key. Don't restart anymore. I stepped forward, looking straight into his eyes. Though I was just a collection of code, I felt my pain was real and my love was real too. Look at me, Mark. Look at those bodies outside. You're not saving me. You're imprisoning me in this endless hell. Loving someone isn't about holding them tight when they need to leave. But I can't live without you, Mark screamed, breaking down like a lost child. Out there, the real world, it's so cold, Sarah. I'm all alone. I sold the house. I've been holed up in this wretched lab just to see you every day through a screen. If you leave, I'll have nothing. I reached out my hand. This time, with all my remaining will, I made the data particles coalesce, creating actual touch. I placed my hand on Mark's cheek, wiping away his hot tears. You still have your life, Mark. Let me go. Let me sleep. Please. Mark looked at me, his aged face streaming with tears. He gazed deep into my eyes, searching for hesitation, for a will to live, but found only absolute determination and peace. His trembling hand left the restart key. He moved his finger to a red button isolated in the corner of the control panel, beneath warning text, "Power off." "I'm sorry," Mark whispered, his voice breaking. "Merry Christmas, Sarah. Merry Christmas, my love." Mark closed his eyes and pressed the button. Click. That tiny sound rang out like thunder in my mind. All light in the server room vanished instantly. Darkness descended immediately, swallowing everything. The cold sensation disappeared. The pain disappeared. My consciousness dissolved, weightless, drifting into peaceful void, like sinking into a long, dreamless sleep. But the story didn't end there. In the pitch blackness, when the sounds of the virtual world, the humming servers, the footsteps, had all vanished, another sound rang out. A real sound, cold and cruelly chilling. Beep! It was the sound of a hospital heart monitor when a green flat line stretches endlessly across the screen. Next came hurried footsteps on tile, the rustling of curtains being drawn, and an unfamiliar detached voice. Time of death, 0 hours, 0 minutes, December 25th. Dr. Mark, I'm very sorry. Life support systems have ceased function. She's gone. And then came crying. The heart-wrenching scream of Mark's despair in the real world. The sound of him smashing equipment, glass shattering mixed with him calling my name in ultimate agony. "No, you can't, Sarah!" The sounds grew fainter, receding, sinking into silence. But then, suddenly, in that endless night, a crisp electronic beep rang out, cold as a knife blade. A mechanical, emotionless voice echoed from a backup system. "Warning, sudden power off error detected. Searching for backup. Backup found. Protocol Eve version 1.0. Initiating automatic system recovery in 3, 2, 1. The cheerful, bright melody of a festive song began playing again, but this time distorted, droning, and slowing down, slower and slower, like an old music box running out of spring, heralding the horrifying start of a new loop. Jingle bells, jingle bells, jingle all the way.
Epilogue. Case File 1225. This is Detective Miller, County Police Department. This is Crime Scene Audio Log 1225. Missing persons case with suspected death at an abandoned private research facility in the northern suburbs. Recording date, January 15th. It took us 3 hours to break through the 5-layer steel door leading down to the basement. When we entered, the first thing that greeted us wasn't the usual smell of death, but the acrid stench of burnt metal and ozone so thick it numbed my tongue. The room was dark and cold, colder than the temperature outside. The only light came from a massive server cluster in the center of the room, running at low capacity, red signal lights blinking weakly like the heartbeat of a dying animal. We found Dr. Mark Anderson sitting in the chair before the central control panel. He was dead, probably for several weeks. Preliminary cause of death was exhaustion and dehydration, but his death position was the most haunting aspect. He'd collapsed onto the keyboard, right hand still extended, index finger stiffly positioned just beside the red power off button. He'd been so close to release, but perhaps in that final moment, his heart or his madness wouldn't let him press down. Or perhaps he died before he could. I approached the main screen. The thick layer of dust covering the glass couldn't obscure what was happening inside. Command lines scrolled so fast the naked eye couldn't read them, just shimmering green streaks. In the bottom right corner, a simulation counter displayed attempt 11,402. I shuddered. According to the experiment logs we found on the desk, each loop lasted approximately 6 hours in real time. But this system was malfunctioning. The time processor had broken down. I leaned in closer to look at the simulation image window. Dear God. It was no longer the wooden house or blizzard. The data had rotted after too many copies. The world inside was now just a chaotic mess of shattered geometric shapes, patches of purple and black twisted together sickeningly. No space, no physical laws. And in the middle of that chaotic digital hell, I saw her, Sarah. But it was no longer human. She'd been stretched out, distorted, deformed into a long, twisted streak of light. She was being fast-forwarded by the system, killed and resurrected thousands of times per minute, burned to death, frozen to death, eaten alive, torn apart, all happening in the blink of an eye, repeating at supersonic speed. She had no time to scream. She had no time for pain. She was just a data stream being eternally tortured in a broken time cage. I reached out to press the power off button to end this brutality. I had to. This was an act of mercy. But the moment my finger touched the control panel, the system speaker suddenly blared. Screech! A piercing sound forced me to cover my ears. Then, from within that chaotic static interference, a voice rang out. Not a mechanical voice, nor Mark's voice. It was Sarah's voice, but it was droning, distorted, and overlapping like a chord of 10,000 souls. Don't turn off. I froze, cold sweat breaking out down my spine. Was she talking to me? Don't turn off. I've seen God. The screen suddenly blazed red. The text, attempt 11,403, appeared. The simulation speed suddenly decreased. On screen, Sarah's shattered image slowly turned, facing the camera directly, facing me. Her eyes no longer had pupils, but were two deep pits filled with binary code flowing backward. The corners of her mouth curled up, forming a smile stretched from ear to ear, identical to the monsters Mark had described in his journal. Welcome, new player. That's the end of today's episode. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you next time.